Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ann Perry. I am a professional numerologist and a soul coach. And today I'm so pleased to be introducing you to a new friend of mine, Kate Evans from Soulful Space. How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a rough day. I'm going to be super honest. I like to answer these questions honestly and not, just give the grocery store thing. I'm having a rough day, but you know what? A few deep breaths and I'm just kind of grounding myself with you and I'm good. I'm here.
You know what? We're just going to roll with it.
Yes,
That's how I rock and roll anyways, right? It's all good. I'm just really, really happy that you're here. Kate was actually introduced to me by a good friend, Annette Dalou from Infinite Soul Love.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite passionate about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking a little bit about why it's important to get rid of your shit so you can get over your shit, right? And this is something that Kate specializes in. So Kate's a psychologist, but she's also a decluttering coach.
Yes.
Very cool. And this is just a little bit of a taste test, a taste run of what we're going to be offering you guys in the Clarity Seekers community on Tuesday, October the 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I just want people to know just what's going on because I'm going into, numerologically, I am going into a 9 personal year here. I'm in the shoulder season of it. So next year will be a 9 personal year. So that's all about getting rid of the junk in your trunk, right?
I love it.
But that closet behind here, I'm no longer afraid to open it. Go me. Right? Yeah. And it's amazing how good you feel when you finally get to that. And the journey.
Mm-hmm.
The journey, Kate.
Sure.
I'd forgotten, like it's been 9 years since I was in a 9-year cycle. And so this is why I kind of wanted to introduce you to the group and to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about why this is so important to declutter our space. And, how did you get into it? What influenced you to do this kind of work?
Well, it was my own personal journey. A lot of the work that I do, I pull from my own life experience and from the experiences of people around me. But I had gone through, I mean, it's a really long, complicated story, but we don't want the whole thing right now. But I had done a lot of work on myself, mentally, emotionally, physically. And I had gotten to a place where I was opening up kind of a mental and emotional space. And I was giving myself more and more of that space and being more forgiving of myself and for like sitting around not doing nothing, periodically giving myself permission to do that. And that actually triggered this thing that said, I want to do something. And I'll be honest, I was consuming YouTube podcasts, books, etc., on decluttering and clean. Actually, I don't even think I got into books at that point. I can't remember the whole sequence, but I was, in cleaning, because we know how to clean, but we don't know how to clean. It's really interesting. So one day I'm watching one of these videos and this woman was talking about the Marie Kondo way of file folding clothes. And I had this drawer of tank tops that made me completely nuts. Like it just was the bane of my existence. How do you organize tank tops? I had them in these 4 piles in this thing, everything underneath I could never find. So I just went, okay, let's just try this. So I pulled everything out of the drawer because that's decluttering rule number 1 is you pull everything out. You do not declutter stuff while it's sitting in its original spot.
Well, I just learned something.
There you go. So I pulled everything out of the drawer, threw it on my bed, went through everything, got rid of, I don't know, maybe not a half, but maybe at least 3/4 of, or at least 1/4 or 1/3 of my tank tops. And then I did the little file folding. If you don't know what file folding is, definitely look it up. And there's a woman, Laura Hutchison, who has a YouTube channel called, was it? Oh, how did shit? It says something about shit in it. It's why. Anyways, she has a really good. If I come up with that eventually, I will share that with the world. Anyways, so I file folded everything and put them back in the drawer, and it was amazing. Like I could see everything that I had, and there was more space in the drawer, and it just felt really good. Like that, it was like,
yeah, you can breathe.
And I wanted to do more of that. I was like, well, that was and I think I sat on it for a day, but I was like, that was really cool. Like, I want more of that. And so eventually I did my entire house. I did it in about 2.5 months. I have a fairly small 2-story house, 1,400 square foot on a slab. It's just my husband and I. We don't have kids. We do have animals. But 2.5 months of me just every day doing a small amount. I was not doing massive amounts every day. I was doing whatever I felt I could do.
Right.
So that's another rule of decluttering, is don't try to take on more than you can actually chew. So that was actually the short version of the story.
So what about the emotional connection to our stuff? I used to be in the moving business, and my job was to go into homes and assess what they had to move. And some of them, God bless them, some of them were hoarders.
Oh, sure.
They knew they had a problem, right? They knew that they had difficulty and a problem, and that they could only move 20,000 pounds. And I do remember one of the last moves I did before I left the business. I walked into a home, and it was a military family, and they were allowed 20,000 pounds. And I've got my little machine out and my little Palm Pilot or whatever it was, and I'm clocking everything. And they had 3 bookcases deep, right? I'm talking like bookcase in front of bookcase in front of bookcase.
Oh, gracious.
Okay. So just in their living room, one room, they had 10,000 pounds. And so, I had to kind of bring them back to a reality point. But what got me was their emotional connection to all this stuff.
Sure.
And sooner die than give up their stuff, right? Can you speak to that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So people ask all the time, like, how do especially, I'll get every once in a while on social media, I'll get some snarky comment from somebody about, like, well, if you just do X, Y, and Z, you never end up with clutter. Well, it's not that simple, because it's emotional.
Right.
We're not all taught how to run a household. So sometimes, we end up as adults. I thought I was just a slob, and so, but then there's this thing of sometimes we hold on to items because it gives us a sense of security.
Yep.
It's a false sense of security. It's that kind of ancient part of your brain at the back saying, you're supposed to be fearful. And so holding on to items, those who end up with more and more and more, it's oftentimes that feeling of, if I keep these things, then everything's going to be okay. Or they'll be people pleasing. And so people give them things and they don't want to say no. Or Aunt Harriet gave me, I can't get rid of it because Aunt Harriet will be upset, who is gone. Or this is something that I inherited, I don't even want, but I feel like I'm being a bad person if I let go of it. I can keep going on and on about this, but I run into all of this emotion. And what I will tell you is that when you decide to take the risk to let go of these physical items, it starts to open up energy all around you. You can't necessarily see it, but it's there, it's happening. And I see people's lives opening up. I'm very curious, Anne, about what's going to happen in your life in the next month or so, because you went through that closet behind you, because the stuck energy in that closet has been released.
Yep.
You're not afraid to go in there. I'm assuming this is your office that we're sitting in right now. A place that you probably spend a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
But there isn't this bundle of stuck energy sitting behind you all day.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And a lot of it was related to pieces of my business from 20 years ago that doesn't even play a part anymore. And it had to go.
But sometimes we hold on to things like that because it was an important part of our lives.
Yeah.
Or it reminds us of something. I knew a woman who, she had been a dancer at one time, and she held on to all of her dance stuff, even though she hadn't danced in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, here's another example I found. And again, I'm under the influence of the 9 energy, right? Which is inspiring me to release and let go of clutter. Okay. So it's a natural state. This is what we see, those of us who are going into the 9. And I went into my cosmetic drawer. And I could not believe the amount of stuff that I had, like old cosmetics that I had. And I know why they were there, because I had this scarcity mentality that said, oh, I can't throw this out because I paid good money for it. And what happens if I need it someday and I don't have the money to buy it? Right. So there's there's that, and there's, you got, if you're brought up to be responsible and don't waste anything and all those kinds of mental conditioning that we get is huge.
Don't waste.
A psychologist to be a clutter clearing coach,
Well, and that's why, like, I think the way that I do work is so important, because there are decluttering companies that will come in, people help you go through your stuff, but you're not addressing the mental and emotional reasons things got this way. You're not addressing the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. You're not creating new systems that actually work with who you are. They might do some organization with you, but is it truly based on like the person you are, the life that you live, and all that sort of stuff? So I've seen people bring in these decluttering companies, and a year later they're cluttered again. So you do the work with somebody like myself, where we're working with the psychology of how things got this way and how we're going to keep it uncluttered once you get there. And that just, it's what sticks.
And don't you find too, as I'm listening to you talk, don't you find too that sometimes keeping around all this old stuff, let's talk about a wardrobe. I mean, I used to work corporate. Have I worn stuff in 10 years? Hell no, right? I'm lucky if I get dressed from the waist down, know. So on any given day, because I'm always working on Zoom. But one of the things I recognize is that we kind of get trapped and stuck in our old stories.
Totally. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. We get stuck in our old stories, and that fear of giving up that old definition of who we were. Who we were is not who we are. It's like, I have a dress. I really, really like this dress. And, if I lost 30 pounds, I'd probably fit back into that dress. Well, here's the truth, sister. If I lost 30 pounds, I'd say, fuck it. I'm going to buy a new dress.
Right, exactly. Yes. Right. You'd be like, oh, I feel amazing. I want a new pretty dress.
You know it. So, good to see you.
Interestingly enough, I actually just got rid of a few pairs of jeans, because the 20 pounds that I've put on in the last few years, it may or may not go anywhere. And I'm just like, kind of,
let's just buy new jeans, shall we?
I think that sounds like a really good idea, because like, even when I squeeze myself into them and like, like them, everything, they're like kind of blown out anyway. So I was like, the heck with it. But the money thing, I wanted to kind of look back, if I might, to the money thing that you had mentioned, of like, I spend money on these cosmetics and now I'm not using them, but I'm going to keep them because somehow that's going to make it so that the money is worth it or something. But this is the money issue, is something people run into all the time, because that kind of mental conditioning you mentioned too, of don't waste money, do everything so that you can, you want to be responsible. That was the word I was looking for. And so I have clients over and over and over again. They say, oh, but I spent X amount on this, or I just bought this, or I did, and it's that money is not coming back. Yeah. Holding on to the item is not going to make that money come back. Now, if you happen to be able to return it, go for it, return it. But if you can't return it, the feeling that so many people have is, I'm being wasteful if I let go of this. Mm-hmm. And there has to be, again, we're coming back to the mental and emotional. You have to do a little bit of wrestling with that mental and emotional piece of, is it better to hold on to this stuff and give yourself the perception that you're not being wasteful? Or is it better to release these things so that you're free from the burden of them, the mental, emotional, and physical burden of them?
Yeah. And I think also sentimentality comes into play.
Oh, gracious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I see this, I see this all the time. I've gotten much better at it. Kids are wonderful, right? Because you can pass this shit down to somebody else. And then that becomes their deal, So, but it does come back to bite you in the ass, because my kids, moved away and they left all their shit behind. So sometimes it doesn't work out so well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
but the sentiment, there's, when I think numerologically, of course, there's this sentimentality that exists with people who have life path numbers of 2, an 11-2 or a 20/2. And sometimes the 4s get caught up in this as well, because the 4s are so practical. They don't waste anything, although they tend not to be the cluttery kind of people, but they don't like to be wasteful. And then you get the 9s that are hugely sentimental, and they have the first greeting card that was ever sent to them,
Oh my.
So there's that. We're going to be addressing that actually when we talk on Tuesday, October 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, when we're doing our full version of this discussion. When we're looking at, the types of people who may need your service more than most. Right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Why don't we pose a question out to the people watching, Kate? Let's see. We got Donna saying, raised by grandparents who grew up during the Depression. To hate clutter and keeping, but it's a fight internally every time. Do you want to address that?
So Donna is holding on to clutter after having been raised by her grandparents. Am I understanding the?
Yeah, raised by grandparents who grew up during the Depression, so everything's valuable, right? Don't waste anything. Right. I learned to hate clutter and keeping it, and clutter and keeping, but it's a fight internally every time.
So it's an interesting thing of the messages that we receive from those people who do raise us, because yes, in a situation where you have people who are raising you who went through the Depression, that there was a trauma. I mean, it was a cultural trauma that was experienced, but then that is then passed on to the next generation, and clearly the generation after that. Exactly. And so we can then end up with this conflictual feeling. I'm not sure if Donna, if this is what you're meaning, but that I don't like clutter, but the messages I was given was you're supposed to keep things. And then you end up not knowing what the right thing is to do.
Right.
And so here's the answer that really nobody ever wants me to give them is you have to listen to your gut. You've got to quiet down all the noise. And that's a lot of like the work that I do with people, but there's all this noise, all these shoulds and all these fears and have tos and these things and fear of judgment. And all that is noise on top of it. And there's this quiet voice underneath that says, I know this is the thing that feels right to me. And you do have to believe that you are allowed to make the rules, that you are allowed to do things because they feel good to you, that they make sense to you. So sometimes we have to kind of battle through. I don't like saying battle through. I just want to say release the expectations of what we were raised with, so we can create the life and home that we want, that makes us feel good in this moment. And so, yeah, I hope, Donna, I hope that addresses what you were saying.
Well, the other thing I try to explain to people who are going through, and this can be any year, right? But in my case, I'm looking at that 9 personal year, is that you want to ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice in favor of keeping this lamp? Right? Yeah. What am I willing to sacrifice? Because if I'm everything's made of energy, right? And so if I decide I'm going to keep this lamp that's ugly and doesn't even fit into my decor anymore, but I'm sentimentally attached to it or whatever, or grandma gave it to me and I can't get rid of it for that reason, keep it. So that plugs a space. Energetically, that plugs a space in your home.
Absolutely.
So when you go into to the next vibration of the 1, let's say, that's an opportunity when something new could come to you. But if you've already plugged that space with something else, what you really need and what serves you well can't come to you because you've already made a choice to block that space. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like we have to consider what's plugging our space and how much do we really love that, because there could be something way better, but it can't come because energetically we've already made the decision to block it, to block that new thing that could be coming. And that can include stuff, material stuff, that can include opportunities, that can include relationships, that can include all kinds of things.
There's so much fear of the unknown. What if I get rid of this thing and what if nothing happens? What if I regret letting go of this? What if
I need it.
Yeah, what if I need it? Absolutely.
Or if someone
And
else needs it.
right. And I have no evidence that this thing is getting in my way. And
Mm,
it's such a tough thing, because when we're talking about that energetic shift and change and things being plugged, it isn't something you can visually look at and see. There does have to be mm, a, just a level of faith, maybe that is
an
that.
investment.
Yeah, that I'm I'm going to do this. I'm going to let go of this thing. I'm going to give myself a chance.
Mhm.
Because that's what it really comes down to, is I'm going to as I release these things, I'm at least doing something different. If I'm not liking what's happening in my life and I keep doing the same thing, I'm holding on to all the same stuff and
Yeah.
nothing is changing. Are you willing to do something different, even if it's a little scary? Because I'm going to be honest with you, most fears do not get resolved by thinking about them.
Mhm.
Most fears require you to take action. So we've got this lamp that Grandma so and so has given us, and we feel obligated to hold on to it. We know that we feel kind of icky and it's draining our energy. Like you can feel that draining
Mhm.
happening. And you got to take the risk. Okay, I'm gonna let go of this. I'm just gonna see what happens.
Yeah. I think too that it's important not to judge yourself
Gosh, yeah.
for your interest in holding on to stuff, because I think, as Donna was saying, her grandparents came from the Depression. Well, that's going to leave a mark, right? And
Yeah.
she was raised by people who had been traumatized by that
Mm-hmm.
experience, right? So that's written in her DNA. I mean, that was part of her before she even incarnated into this lifetime. There is a
Mm-hmm.
lineage of belief systems that impact us
Mm-hmm.
today, right? So, like, uh, think about people with weight issues who have a tendency to overeat because somebody piles it onto their plate, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't leave anything on their plate because that would be wasteful. They're ingrained to believe, oh, my grandparents had nothing, they starved.
Yes.
I can't insult them or offend them by not eating all of this. That's
Mm-hmm.
their shit. That's not your shit. That's their shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's learning how to determine the difference between what's their karmic crap that they're pouring onto us
Mm-hmm.
and what's our own. How we choose to respond to it, that creates our karma, right?
Right.
So,
And yeah, it's we have to take charge of our own lives.
yes, yes. Elizabeth has something great to say. She says, I love Marie Kondo.
Yeah.
Does it spark joy?
Mm-hmm.
I love,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you for reminding us of that. But still not easy to let go. Seems I inherited the old photographs. Oh, amen, sister. Oh, all right. We got to talk. Seems I inherited the old photographs of the family just because I wouldn't allow them to be just thrown out, which demands me having to go through all the stuff and give it to respective parts of the family, or, of course, let go. Quite a task, which I have been procrastinating for some time. What about procrastination? Isn't this a great part of this? It's all linked, feeling stuck and all. Wow. Oh my goodness. I got lots to say to that. Go ahead.
Um, so I want to start with the sparking joy thing,
Yeah.
because to live in a home where you can have like your best life, you kind of need to be surrounded by things that are joyful to you. And do I love it? Do I use it? Are the first two questions I want anybody to ask themselves, because you might have like a garlic press that you don't love, but you do use it all the time. So, I mean, there are some
Mhm.
things, but if you give yourself permission to only have things that you really love, that you really enjoy, and I will tell you, as somebody who, like, I cut down my wardrobe so significantly, and I can go in there and I can grab something almost any day of the week and put it on, and I will be okay with it, because I only have things that I feel good in this body, not the
Right.
one I had, 20 pounds ago.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so then when we're addressing something like, gosh, like photographs, we have this like feeling that if we get rid of photographs, that we're getting rid of the memories or we're disrespecting the memories. And you know what? I love an actual photograph that you can hold in your hands.
Me
I
too.
do. I was actually raised by a photographer. So like photos are really mean something to me. And they take up a lot of space.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so so photos are a complicated one, but I will just say to you that it's there are a lot in there that are just people going,
Yeah.
um, that are not really going to spark joy in you or in anybody. But and how many pictures do we need of ourselves or of the people in our lives, from like the same event or something like that?
Yeah.
And I'm the mean lady who makes you like who asks these really icky questions and sounds really unempathetic, but I have to do that.
Well, that's part of what you do, right? You couldn't do what you do if you didn't do that. So
Mhm,
that's a good
mhm.
quality. Yeah, it's really this whole process. What I'm thinking about is really quite interesting because, as I said, a couple of weeks ago, I just went to her and had her right there at that closet. And I used to say to my clients, if I had to go in there for something, I'd say, please don't judge me by my closet. Right? And I'd open the door and I'd grab whatever I wanted and I'd shut the door. Kind of thing, right? A little bit of shame going on in there.
Mhm.
Anyway, I cleaned it all out and I felt really good. And then I got a phone call from my ex-husband who had a flood and a lot of the stuff got wrecked, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of it were pictures and a lot of it were a lot of things related to our two kids. And he asked me if I would come and help him sort through what needed to be kept and what needed to be thrown out. And that's the first time I'd been back to that house in 10 years since I left, right? So it was a
Wow.
huge, huge healing moment. But
Yeah.
it was big for me because he's completely overwhelmed. I was the one going in saying, no, chuck, 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 chuck. And it was just felt so liberating to say, we don't need this, right?
Mhm.
We really don't need this. And the concept, he too is going into a 9 personal year. So the idea of decluttering in his effort to move on, get the house sold. He has to sell the house. It's too big.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful therapy, if you will. If you'll, as you talk about pictures, just get into that big trunk of photographs that someone has burdened you with. I
Mhm.
understand, Lizabelle, mine was actually mailed to me. Huge crate full of photographs because my brother didn't want them.
Oh my gosh.
And now I'm faced with having to sort through them. But it's a trip down memory lane. It brings up all kinds of stuff. And Spirit will only give you what you're able to see, what you're ready to see. So
Mhm.
it's very cathartic, I think, the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you do have to really give yourself the time and space and perhaps set time limits on a project like that that's going to send you down memory lane.
Yes.
Because if you just sit there and you're just sorting through photographs,
Good.
one, your back is going to cramp up at some point. But saying, I'm going to do this for 15 minutes and then you do it and
Yeah.
then you walk away, or I'm going to do this for half an hour and do it in chunks like that.
Yep.
So that you're not just sitting there for hours and hours, which would be so exhausting mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yes.
It's and just always understanding what your limits are and not lying to yourself and knowing like something like going through photographs is going to be an emotional experience. So don't pretend it's not going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know that that's what's going to happen and
Yeah.
give yourself the space for it.
Absolutely. No, I definitely put for many reasons, I put a time limit of an hour and a half. That was it. I'm good. I'm out.
There you go. Yep.
The other thing I wanted to mention about that too is that when you're holding on to the heirlooms, it's so interesting when you do go into this 9 energy, right? And the 9 energy can show up. This wasn't supposed to be a numerology show, but the 9 energy can show up in various places. The most obvious is the 9 personal year, which is when we're already inclined to want to release and let go of stuff.
Okay.
But there can be a long-term cycle at play. There can be a monthly cycle at play. Doesn't matter. We're all affected by it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, at some point, you might be inclined to look at that old teacup that you've never used, that your grandmother left you. And it was also important at one point stage in your life because, you have to honor grandma. Grandma doesn't give a shit. Grandma's dead. Like, she don't care. Like, she'd be quite happy to see you turf that thing to somebody who would really want it. That's the thing. Give consideration to who might really appreciate it. Don't just shift the burden, like mail your sister a big box of photographs. Like, give some consideration to who might really appreciate it. And if you don't know anybody in your circle that can appreciate it, find a circle that will. Find a secondhand store or some kind of Goodwill to do it. Because there's energy attached to everything, right? And there's
definitely
energy attached to when you shift it somewhere else, to shift the responsibility as well. So,
and I'm just going to throw out there again, remember, I'm the mean lady. Sometimes we have to throw things in the garbage bin. We don't want that. We want to rehome, recycle, reuse. We want to do something that feels like it has more meaning than putting things into a garbage bin. And that is something I see holding people back a lot. All right, Anne, you just started chuckling. What was that?
I'm trying to watch the messages and I'm laughing.
Yeah.
Nadine calling says, I got rid of my cheating husband this year of 9. You
go decluttering. Well done.
High five to you, sister. Sorry.
But that's awesome, because that's evidence of the thing that decluttering isn't just about this physical stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about decluttering everything. Your mind, your life, your self-perception, your habits, your relationships. I mean, everything can become cluttered. And honestly, especially in our culture today, we were talking before about grandparents who have gone through the Depression. What an opposite experience to what our culture is today. Absolutely. Today, our culture is about excess.
Yes.
It's serious excess. And that gets us in a lot of trouble. And truly, we need to let go of the stuff that doesn't serve us. And if it's a cheating husband, so be it.
Yeah, let him service somebody else.
Right.
Can I say that?
You can say
that. But also, I feel that as a society, we now are exposed to so much advertisement. You're nobody unless you have this. You're nothing unless you buy that. You're not educated enough unless you go to this school. You're not cool enough unless you drive this car. Everywhere we go, we're being inundated with, you're not good enough unless you buy this, right? So we are constantly under a barragement of this necessity to buy and accumulate. And of course, we've got this excessive stuff, right? And there's so much. I bought it because I didn't feel worthy on some level, so I acquired it. And I often tell the story of my first laptop. I was invited to speak at a women's retreat weekend. I don't know, it was 20 something years ago now, about numerology. It was my first gig, and I thought, oh, I don't have the right outfit to wear. I have to go out and buy a new outfit, right? So I go out and buy the outfit, and I'm looking like $1 million. And then I thought, oh shit, I don't have a laptop. I can't walk into a corporate event like this without a laptop. They're going to think I'm a nobody. I better go buy a laptop, right? Why? Because I just didn't feel like anybody. I just felt less. So I buy the laptop. $650 back then was a lot of money.
That's a lot, yeah.
Did I need a laptop? No. Right? Did I need a boost to my image? Yeah, that's why I bought it. But I kept that laptop 15 years after it died to remind me that I don't have to buy things to make me feel better about myself, that I need to question before I bring things into my space. I need to question the motivation that's causing me to want to buy this thing.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And that's it, slowing down and asking yourself, what is the reason I am acquiring this thing? What is the reason I'm saying yes to this gift? Yeah. What is the reason? I was talking with somebody just this weekend about like going into Target.
Yeah.
Target is really up their like home decor game. You walk in there and go, ooh, I want this, I want that, but if you don't need that stuff,
is it a want or a need?
Is it a want or a need? I want everybody, when you purchase something, I want you to ask yourself, is this a want? Is this a need? It's not that you're not allowed to want things. You are allowed to purchase things that you want, but just be clear with yourself. And then I want you to ask yourself, do I have a place for this? Do I know what I'm going to do with it? Or am I just buying this because it's pretty cool, interesting, different, caught
Mhm.
my eye?
You know, one of the things I say to myself when I'm out and about and I'm feeling inspired to buy something, I pause for a second, I take a deep breath, and I ask myself, what emotional need in me is not being met right now that says I have to buy this?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that made me feel not good enough?
Mm-hmm.
What did they have that I have to have?
Yeah.
You start going back and you start connecting the dots to it, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
realize that it's because you just don't, at some level, your sense of self-worth is a little low and it needs to be fed. And
Sure.
Donna just made an amazing statement here. I just want to read this.
Yeah.
You don't even have to leave the house to accumulate. Amazon will bring it right to your door within days.
Bingo.
That is brilliant. I love that you said that. Holy.
I
It's
talk to
true. Like
I talk to so many people who talk about having an Amazon addiction, and then they giggle.
yeah.
They go, "Oh man, like that's not something to giggle at, and it's not something to joke about because shopping and impulses, these impulses that are you talked about eating earlier, and eating can be an impulse, shopping can be an impulse, and yes, Amazon with Amazon Prime and get it today by 5 o'clock or get it tomorrow, that has given us this instant gratification thing, which is it's feeding the exact same place in your brain that
Mhm.
drug addictions come from.
Right.
So, don't laugh at this stuff. Like, take it seriously and be careful. You put something in your Amazon cart, man, let it sit there for a while. Don't
Yeah.
buy it right away. Ask yourself a bunch of questions
Yeah.
and just slow down.
Cool your jets.
I want
Yeah.
everybody to just slow down, take a few deep breaths. We move too fast and we're a very anxious society,
Yeah.
moving much too fast.
Benny is asking, I'm so sentimental with and nostalgic with past stuff. Is that a life path 7 thing? Misery loves company, Benny. So I'm the poster child for 7s. But looking at your name, Benny, assuming that that's your first name on your birth certificate, either way, it starts with the letter B. The B relates to the number 2. The number 2 relates to sentimentality, right? So, and if it's not Benjamin, it's Benny. If that's how your first name actually appears on your birth certificate, the B is a 2 and the Y is a 9, and that's a cornerstone and a capstone. Add the 2 together, and that's the 9, and that's the sentimental one, right? So, yeah. Yes, that's so true. Not laughing, it's addictive. We are drowning in stuff and drowning Mother Earth, 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
drowning in stuff.
so, why would someone need a decluttering coach? Like, why can't these people just do it themselves? Why would they need to employ someone like yourself to come in and do it?
Because what you're doing so far ain't working.
Well,
I mean,
look at the mess you got yourself in.
this is the simple answer is, and I ask people, like, how long are you going to do this for?
Yeah.
And I get it. It costs money. It costs money to hire somebody to help you.
Yeah.
What is it costing otherwise? So the need for somebody like me for a decluttering coach is because I'm going to come in and I'm going to see things with a wider view. I'm going to come in, I'm going to see things from a more objective perspective. I'm going to be able to ask you the questions you don't even know to ask yourself. And maybe it's about the items, maybe it's about yourself and your feelings. I come in and I bring a different, it's a different take on everything, plus the accountability. So, so many people ask me, well, I can't stay motivated. The accountability of a decluttering coach is invaluable because you're going to be meeting with me either every week or every 2 weeks, and you're going to have me asking you, did you do the thing that we said you were going to do?
Right.
And as human beings, we want to please other people. So we want to do what our coach, we told our coach you were going to do. And I'm going to teach you skills that you don't even know that you need. And you can read all the books in the world and you can watch all the social media in the world that you want. And there's a lot of wonderful information out there, but sometimes putting it together in like the little Tetris that is you is very difficult if you can't see that objective perspective of yourself. And I can come in and I can say, okay, we'll take this one skill and this other skill and this one. So instead of the overwhelm of here's all these ideas that somebody like, say, Marie Kondo, wonderful, well-respected decluttering expert, she got lots of ideas. And honestly, not all of her ideas work for all people, but people will think, I should be able to do it this way. I'm going to come in and say, should doesn't apply anymore. You and I are going to talk through this and we're going to figure out what works for you.
Right.
So that is the brief breakdown. I could write a thesis on this.
I understand that. I absolutely understand that. I know when I was dealing with my ex-husband, God bless him, he's gone through some massive losses. His mom just passed away. His younger brother just passed away. He's gone through a massive flood in his home. I mean, he's just like completely bewildered and overwhelmed. And, you know, he needs a little bit of help right now to go through this stuff without guilt, but the direction, you know, and I've seen this when I was in the moving business. I used to see this. I'd walk into people's homes and they would just be like, they'd just be so embarrassed to let me into their home in the first place. Right. It's that shame because they know they're in trouble. Right. But it's having to kind of coach these people because they, like you said, they don't have a clue, and that's okay. If you don't have that skill set, there are people who do, you know. So now this is something you can do online too, isn't it? This is not something you actually physically have to be present for.
Absolutely. So I do all of my work virtually. Periodically, if there's somebody in the Chicagoland area, because that's where I'm at, I might work with them in their home. I do like a all morning or all afternoon thing, but mostly I'm just doing this online. And so I'm talking to you, and we might just be talking through what you've done this past week, what you're going to do, what the barriers have been, what your hesitations are. We may just be talking through all that. And I will tell you, we end up talking about more than just your stuff. We end up talking about your whole life. My clients sometimes go, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm talking about life stuff. I'm like, no, that's all part of this. Yeah. But there are also times when somebody props me up, you know, phone, tablet, laptop, whatever it is, in the room that they're going to be doing some work, and they use me as a sounding board. So they just go, okay, I'm going to go through this pile of clothes, this pile of books, whatever it might be. And they go, well, I've got this one, I'm going to do that. And they're just talking through it with me. And there's stories that come out as they're doing that, which are always really fun for me. But when they get stuck, I can help unstick them in those situations. So there's kind of two different ways that sessions will go. And either way, it makes it so you can just stay in your house and do this. And you get really inspired after our session. You can just go and dive right into it. It's like get the emails of like, oh, I've already done X, Y, and Z. And that's so much fun.
So Lauren makes a good point here. She says, I don't own a lot of things, so it's easy to be decluttered. My mind needs more decluttering than my physical area does.
I'm sorry, your what?
Your mind, she says her mind needs more decluttering.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And, you know, and that is, so when you're dealing with a chaotic mind and you want some support with that, that might be a therapist.
Yeah.
You know, and you might want to just consider that. I'm a psychologist. I've worked as a therapist for 20 years. We're kind of awesome. It also might be some other type of coach. I know, you know, so many coaches who do so many different kinds of really neat work. And it might be, for me, one of the huge things that I did that helped declutter my mind was I went through yoga teacher training. So yeah, our mental state can be very cluttered and very chaotic. And you can have a really neat, tidy home while other things are falling apart.
I find with me, like the state of my desk is a state of my mind.
Sure.
You know, if I try really hard at the end of the day to clear all the junk off my desk and to keep it, you know, and I'll put on my keyboard what I plan to attack first thing the next morning. So that way I don't really have to think about it, because I tend to be a bit of a head case in that respect. But the other thing too is like when you have streams and streams and streams of texts and whatnot on your phone, get rid of them, clear them off. When you've got emails, like the spam folder, clean it out, you know, things like that. Once you've read it and you've dealt with it, get rid of it,
Mhm.
because that's what creates, in my mind, that's what creates a whole lot of clutter.
Sure. And staying on top of it.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, they need to get to the place where they can stay on top of it.
Right. And when they
So,
do, then what happens? How do you maintain that?
and that's where the systems come in. When the mail comes in, you go through it immediately, standing over the trash bin so you can throw things out. And then you know where, if you still get paper bills, you know where those are going to go. You know when you're going to deal with them. We're not gathering a whole bunch of stuff. It's when you buy clothing, especially, it's the 1 in, 1 out rule.
Ah!
Remember, mean lady.
That one hurt.
And so there, any of these systems and having things organized in a way that makes sense for you so that you can stay on top of it, which oftentimes involves labels. But if you know where everything goes and there's a place for everything, it is not hard to keep a house tidy. I was a slob, well, with a capital S. I've got some really horrifying stories. I decluttered, I reorganized, I learned how to put the systems in place, and I have had to revamp them many times, but I have never had clutter since I did my initial decluttering.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
It's possible.
I'm so excited about taking this topic even deeper. Tuesday, October 10th, guys, you do not want to miss this. We've got part 1. Kate's doing a 2-part series for us about why clutter clearing is so important, how much more it is than just getting rid of your shit, right? We're talking about once you get rid of your physical shit, your material shit, then you can let go of your emotional shit, right? So we're really going to take that into a deep dive. But in order to be able to attend this event, you need to join the Clarity Seekers community, which you can find on my website. Let me see if I have a banner around that. Let's see. There it is. There, down below, the little spirally thing that's going there. Clarity Seekers community. It's a fantastic community. We have live events in there every month, usually around 8 to 10 live events each month. So, and we're always dealing with things that help you to be a better you. So we've got teachers in there that are teaching astrology, gene keys, human design, numerology, right? There's all kinds of stuff. We've got a life coach in there, a resident life coach in there. We've got a resident medium in there, and you can have access to these people every single month. So I'd love for you to check it out. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on in there. And I would also love for you to check out Kate at soulfulspacecoaching.com. You've got a freebie on there, I think. When you land on the website, there's
yeah, I have. I've got a number of worksheets that you can print out yourself and utilize to help you. And the worksheets are really not even just about your physical clutter; they are about your mental, emotional, and spiritual clutter. And I've even got a few like 30-day challenges in there that you could put yourself to. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, maybe I'll get more cleaned out before before next Tuesday.
Accountability.
Right? Damn it. Careful what I say. But anyways, I want to say thank you so much to everybody for spending time with us this afternoon. Hey, Robin. Yeah, you'll be there. You're a member of the community, so you'll definitely be there.
Great.
And what else have we got in here? Robin's here. Nisi's here. She's also a member. Anyway, there's a bunch of you here. So, but I hope to see you there. And Kate, I'm looking forward to seeing you as well. Thank you so much for all your time and all that encouragement, accountability. All right.
You got this. Whatever you think it is that you don't got, you got it.
I know. It's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. So I'm looking forward to it. So thanks, guys. Thank you so much for showing up. If you got any questions, by all means, post them in there. We'll try and get to them after the stream has ended. But again, thank you so much for being here. I'm hoping you're creating your best day ever. Take care. Bye for now.